I went on a date and I don't remember the past 2 weeks. I'm so f***ing excited. Finally, after ages of failed date attempts on Tinder, I matched with a guy I like. Who knows, maybe this will even turn into something bigger, but then again, I shouldn't reach for the stars with someone I don't even really know. He does seem cute, but I don't know him in person. Maybe he's someone horrible or a serial killer for all I know. Wow, your optimism never fails to disappoint me, Melissa. To be honest, I'm not the prettiest girl out there. And no, I'm not saying this for attention and pity. It's just that I'm 39 years old, and people have already made babies, while I'm out here, still trying to find a man that likes me. At least for my personality. Talking about pity, my mother left me when I was just born, and my sister died almost a year ago. I miss her terribly. The pain of losing a sibling, it's like losing a part of yourself. I lost the prettier part, I guess. We were really similar when it came to personality, but not looks. Well, she was a goddess compared to a worm like me. Life finally seems to get better. The date's name is Josh, and we agreed to go on a date this Friday, or today. It's been a long day at work, you know? I have to take a nap if I don't want to fall asleep on my date this evening. Having to deal with my diabolical boss screaming my ear off every day has had its toll on me. I hate it there. My colleagues hate me too for some reason. I didn't do anything to them. Like I stole their spouses. Not that I ever could. I laid my head on my couch, trying to get as comfortable as possible. I set up an alarm, as I didn't want to oversleep on my date with my possible future husband. I'm just being silly. I could feel myself drifting off into oblivion as the darkness engulfed me. I woke up confused. I looked around and saw that I was in my bedroom. That's strange. I remember clearly falling asleep on my couch. I looked at the window, through which the sunlight bathed my eyes. Wait, the sun was set when I took a nap. Is it morning already? My date with Josh. Oh God, don't tell me I was sleeping the entire time I should have been in the bar. I looked at my digital calendar and saw that it was Sunday. Fucking hell. How could I be so stupid? How could I be so incapable of taking one guy on a date? It could have just been a one-night stand, but I couldn't even manage to get that done. I'm a failure. I don't deserve to be loved. I rushed out of bed, trying to find my phone as soon as possible. I needed to call Josh and explain to him what happened. I don't want him to think that I stood him up or something. I tried to look on the table next to my couch, as I was sure I put it there. Nope. I tried going to the kitchen and looking at the countertops, the bedroom, my bed, and my nightstands. Nope. Nothing at all. I even looked in the bathroom, but it wasn't there either. Apart from being stupid and incapable of doing anything, was I getting dementia too? Nah, I'm not old enough for that. My purse was also missing. Great. I missed my date. I lost my phone and my purse. Josh probably hates me, and I'm still ugly. What a wonderful life I have. I decided to write in my diary, as most of my emotions and thoughts were engraved there. It's not like I had anyone to share them with. It's sad, I know. Well, there is my father, but I doubt that he'd be into hearing me mop about how miserable I am. I opened my diary, and to my surprise, my last entry that was on the 9th of June was the following: September 6th, 23. Dear Diary, I'm so freaking excited. I'm writing this as I'm listening to Toxic from Britney Spears. I have just gotten ready for a date with Josh. In 10 minutes, I'm supposed to leave the house, but I thought that I'd have the time to share my butterflies in my stomach with something. I'll write about how our date went the moment I get from home, hopefully good, as I should get my fat ass from this bed, as nobody likes tardy people. Wait, so I didn't oversleep. One may wonder if this was written by someone else, but I can assure you, no one can recreate my handwriting. Not even the greatest of doctors. Also, whoever wrote that sounds just like me. The thing I'm worried about is the fact that I have zero recollection of the date. Was I drugged? No, it can't be. Josh doesn't seem like the type of guy to do something like that. Looks can lie, no. This neighborhood is very safe. No one here would do something like that. I tried to calm my thoughts as I heard the door swing open. Honey, you've left your door unlocked. I take it you're home, my dad said, as I prepared myself for a lecture that was going to drain my soul out of my ears because I probably didn't call him or something. You know, honey, your silent treatment is getting annoying. Stop acting like a child and tell me if I did something wrong. Not talking to me isn't gonna fix anything, you know. It's been 2 weeks. Grow up already, my dad was yelling in the hallway as I took a swift look at our other digital calendar. June 24th, 2023. What is the actual foo? I've been out for 2 whole weeks. What the hell happened to me? How can someone be out for so long? Or could it be that I just don't remember anything? Wait, how long have I been without my phone then? I saw my father get into my bedroom from the hallway, and I could hear the most devastating scream in my entire life. It pierced through my ears to my brain, which caused an immense amount of fear that made me run like a wild animal. Dad, what happened? Is everything okay, Dash? My question was interrupted by the body lying on my bed, covered in blood. Oh, my daughter, who did this to you? Oh, my sweet child, the pain of my father would be felt through the words that were coming out of his mouth. I could see his daughter, me, lying on the bed, with a stab wound on my stomach. It was not a pretty picture anyone should see, let alone the father of the figure laying there, murdered. I remember what happened now. I remember everything. My date with Josh was going great until I felt the urge to go to the bathroom. When I came back, he was nowhere to be seen. The bastard had ditched me, or so I thought. I drank my booze we had ordered in one swift gulp as I made my way towards my home. I thought about how I'd never find the one. I didn't look as bad in my pictures, and so the guy had thought I tried to catfish him. I'm bound to be unhappy. Forever. I was really tipsy, almost as if I was high. The entire walk home I could not walk straight. Maybe I should try dating girls. Pun intended. They clearly have fewer standards. At least where I live. I entered my home, and as I was about to close the door, it was pushed back, which made me fall on my butt. In my drunken state, which is weird as I only had 1 glass of booze, I could do nothing but scream as the person in front of me picked me up and stabbed me in my stomach. He even rotated the knife to inflict more suffering. Or maybe try and make sure he'd kill me. First I was miserable because I was ugly. Then I was even more miserable because my date ditched me. And now I'm even more miserable, as I can remember the face of the guy that killed me. It was my own father. I knew he never liked me, but I never thought he wished me dead, let alone try and kill me. Oh, remember how I mentioned I was feeling high, even though I drank nothing? My father probably paid him to spike my drink. I guess he might have read my diary entry from exactly a year ago. June 24th, 22, I did it. I finally did it. After years of envy and hatred, I finally found the courage to end my sister. That BTCH had everything. Everything that I've ever wanted. Why did she get to be beautiful while I got to look like Frankenstein's monster? Why? We had the same parents, didn't we? Why did she get blessed with my mother's genes while I don't even look like my father? Was I even his daughter? I mean, I do understand that pretty privileges exist, but I didn't expect life to bless her with everything she ever wanted just because she got the looks. Apart from looking good, she also managed to get married to my crush. Do you know what that felt like, being stabbed in the back like that by your own sibling? It wasn't fair. She was the one who got good grades too, which led to her getting special treatment from our father. Our mother left us when I was born. I wonder if she did it because she was too embarrassed to admit having this both foul-looking and actually foul creature as a daughter. Nonetheless, while her death may not make me any less ugly, at least the jealousy is gone. I made her look like she committed suicide. It was perfect. Everyone thinks she overdosed on sleeping pills on her own, and no one suspected anything but the lie I orchestrated. You may be wondering why I'd write such a horrendous crime I've committed here. I had to get it out. She was my sister, and I'm the one responsible for her death. I'm sad that she's gone. My love for her was tremendous, but not as great as the fire I felt every time I looked at her and saw her having everything I never could. I doubt that anyone cares enough about me to read my diary anyway. May she rest in peace. I am my father's daughter after all. His acting is impeccable. Maybe I would have been a good actress. I went to a local trail for a date. Things aren't what they seem here. I made the mistake of sending a risky message several drinks deep on a Saturday night. An ex I dated for 3 years, Claire, was recently divorced and I'd been trying to work up the courage to reach out. Instead of doing this in a pre-planned, calculated way, I pulled the Hail Mary out of randomly messaging and asking how she'd been. I immediately regretted my choice, panicking as I heard my phone chime. Surprisingly, her response was positive. She let me know she's been better, but was doing all right. She seemed open to having a conversation, and we continued to text until I passed out early in the morning. The next day, I woke up, my head pounding and feeling dehydrated. I quickly remembered having a conversation with Claire, but couldn't recall the details. I looked at my messages. I felt embarrassed at how much I stumbled over my words. It was clear I was nervous about talking to her again. In my drunken state, I worked up the courage to ask her out. Surprisingly, she agreed and we were to meet at a local trail that night around 7. I did remember her being pretty outdoorsy, so this suggestion made sense. Although I wasn't looking forward to a hike in the heat while hungover, I was very much looking forward to reconnecting with Claire. I knew she hadn't been divorced long, so I wasn't sure what she was looking for, but I was glad I was at least getting a chance to see her again after all these years. I met up with Claire at the trail as planned. I recognized her silver Honda immediately. She stepped out wearing a pair of cargo shorts and hiking boots. Despite it being 5 years since I saw her last, she didn't look a day over 21. Her shoulder-length blonde hair looked bright as ever and her green eyes lit up the room, just like I remembered. "Hey Aiden," said Claire, hugging me. I didn't have liquid courage backing me up anymore, so I was extremely nervous. We began walking and luckily, the conversation was easy. Claire didn't talk much about her ex-husband, thankfully. She seemed to be enjoying her post-divorce life. She recently moved to a townhouse and got a new dog, a yellow lab named Baxter. She also told me she left nursing to pursue graphic design like she always wanted. I remembered the arguments with her family when she started college. They put a lot of pressure on her to go into the medical field instead of anything creative. I'm glad you're finally doing what's right for you, I told her. Claire nodded. At some point, the conversation shifted to heavier topics, particularly her brother's overdose a few years ago. I apologized to her for not attending the funeral. She was very understanding. We settled into a comfortable silence, taking in the scenery. The landscape of the trail was a beautiful mix of woods and prairie. When do you want to start heading back? I asked. It was almost 8 now and would be getting dark soon. Claire didn't respond. I wondered if she heard me. I figured she'd tell me when she was ready, and I wanted to spend as much time with her as possible, so I didn't ask again. I noticed we were past the parts of the trail I was familiar with. The trail led us over a hill. When we got to the other side, I noticed the landscape looked different. Despite being in Ohio, it looked like Washington State Park. Dramatic, tall pine trees lined the landscape, some covered in moss. The tree line was so dense we were comfortably covered in shade. I paused and looked around. Claire kept up her usual pace, barely seeming to notice. I was surprised. I never heard how scenic this part of the trail was. Damn, this is incredible, I commented, hoping to make conversation. Me and Claire talked about taking a trip to Washington many times during our relationship, but never took the plunge. I was always really sad we never got the chance to go. I thought about going on a road trip with friends, but it felt strange to go without her. Claire nodded and continued walking. I paused to take some pictures. Claire didn't stop to wait for me or even slow down. This kind of annoyed me, but I caught up to her, eager to see more of this section of the trail. We continued walking in silence. The beautiful tree line continued for a good 15 minutes, then seemed to gradually revert to the normal Ohio landscape. I didn't know what to say at this point. It was clear that Claire didn't want to talk right now. Yet, she also didn't seem interested in concluding the hike either. I didn't like the mixed signals. I decided to give her some time before trying to start a conversation. The trees and tall prairie grass seemed to gradually thin out as we continued down the trail. The ground beneath appeared dry and cracked. Eventually, we reached an area that looked like a barren desert landscape. There were even cacti, which, as anyone in the Midwest knows, don't grow here naturally. What the hell? I whispered. I finally broke the silence. Did you know this was here? I asked Claire. I didn't, but it reminds me of our trip to Arizona, she said, smiling. I thought back to the trip, smiling to myself. We took the trip our last year together. Even though we were on the rocks at that point, we got along great during the trip, and I thought it would be like a new beginning. Unfortunately, things didn't stay the same once we returned home. I snapped back into reality. I didn't understand how a landscape could change so rapidly. How were plants for a desert climate even able to survive here? Claire was barely reacting to our strange surroundings. I started to worry about her. She seemed despondent. I worried that maybe this was too much for her. It wasn't long after her divorce, after all. It also wasn't like she was reconnecting with an old fling we dated long-term and had a messy breakup. I couldn't even remember the details of what that final argument was about. All I remember was watching her leave and feeling more powerless than I have in my entire life. Eventually, the desert-like landscape gave way to the Ohio landscape I was more familiar with. I stopped for a moment to try to look up the trail to see how far it went. I tried for several minutes, but was unable to get cell service. By the time I looked up, Claire was so far ahead I couldn't see her. I was annoyed at this point. Why would she just ignore me when she agreed to come here with me? It was also getting dark at this point, and I was ready to call it a night. I quickly headed up the trail to find Claire. There was a large pond with some trees and a bench surrounding it. The path appeared to end here. "Claire," I yelled, looking around. Claire snuck up behind me, causing me to jump. What the? I was cut off by Claire's unexpected kiss. She then took my hand and led me to the edge of the pond. She began taking off her clothes as she dipped her feet in the water. "Wanna get in?" she asked, winking. I couldn't believe my luck. Maybe this date was turning around. I stripped down to my boxers and followed her into the water. We kissed again. Claire then went underwater. I waited and she didn't come back up. I could barely see since it was almost dark now. I tried to feel around in the water for Claire. I couldn't find her. I began to panic. I held my breath and got underwater. I couldn't see, but as I swam around I felt something touch me. I reached out and felt a hand grab onto mine. It must be Claire. I was trying to lead her to the surface when I realized the hand was pulling me downward. I pulled it up but was immediately yanked back down. The grip on my hand tightened. I struggled to get free, almost breathing in water. Then, I heard a strange noise through the water. It almost sounded like hissing, or maybe growling. My arm flew up as I shot up to the surface in fear. Something grazed my back and I jumped. I turned around to see a human arm, decaying and detached from the body. It even had a bone sticking out the end. I screamed and ran out of the water, falling and tripping over rocks. I began hyperventilating. I called Claire several times, but got no response. Had that creepy thing in the water gotten her? I found my phone and dialed 911. Surprisingly, I got a signal. I frantically talked to the operator, begging them to get someone out there as soon as possible. Officers and an ambulance arrived soon after. The first officer who arrived on the scene asked for my ID, and I showed it to him. He glanced at it and then back at me. He asked me if I could come with him to the station to answer some questions. I didn't know how to tell him what happened without sounding out of my mind. I was happy to help, but wanted to know if Claire was okay first. He was honest with me that he couldn't give me an answer yet, but would tell me as soon as he knew. I rode with him back to the station, and he stepped out for a few minutes to take a call. His facial expression was noticeably different when he returned. "How did you know Claire?" he asked. I explained to him that we dated our senior year of high school and the first 2 years after. He asked why we broke up. I sat and thought for a moment. Embarrassingly enough, I couldn't remember the exact reason, just that we grew apart. I told him that. He nodded. "Did she talk to you at all about her divorce?" he asked. I shrugged. "Not really. I didn't think it was my place to ask. Maybe she was still in love with me," I joked. The officer didn't seem to think it was funny. I apologized. The officer asked some strange questions like where I grew up and what I did for work. Finally, I got frustrated and stopped him. "Did they find Claire?" I asked. He tried to avoid the question, but I insisted. The officer sighed and began talking. "Trevor, Claire's been missing for days now. Her high school ex, Aiden, was found dead in his apartment a few hours ago, but his phone, wallet, and several other items were missing. It appeared to be a robbery. But then we found out you made threats to him several months ago. You and Claire were divorcing, and you assumed it was because she was still in love with him. Phone records show that messages went to Claire from Aiden's phone at a time that was after his time of death. You lured Claire out to the trail, then murdered her and tossed her body in the pond. For whatever reason, you dressed up in some of Aiden's clothes tonight and called us as him. You must be feeling guilty. Why don't you go ahead and just tell me what happened? I started shaking. The officer told me to think back a few days, and I did. I was drinking. I was alone. I looked at Claire's profile from a fake account I made. She blocked me immediately after our divorce was finalized. She posted a gorgeous selfie. Tons of thirsty, pathetic guys liked it. I clicked to see the names. Aiden, of course, had. I knew she still had feelings for him. Sometimes I didn't blame her. It's hard to lose feelings for an old flame. That said, I hated hearing about him. When we were moving into our marital home, I found some hand-painted terracotta pots in one of her boxes. She snatched them away from me as I unpacked them. I kept asking where they were from, and she finally caved. Apparently, she and Aiden painted them during their trip to Arizona. Why she would insult me by still having them, I don't know. Sitting at home alone, I fixated on Aiden more and more. I already knew where he lived. I'd figured this out months ago. I'd also figured out his routine. The guy was pretty predictable after all. I watched outside while his lights turned off for the night that Saturday. I entered his apartment with the spare key I had paid to have made by the sketchy maintenance guy. The sedatives I'd laced into Aiden's water jug were working. He didn't stir as I walked into his room. I opened his phone. I knew he and Claire were having an affair long before the divorce. Shockingly, there weren't any messages between them during our marriage. That didn't mean anything, though. I could feel it in my bones that Claire still loved him. I began messaging Claire as Aiden. She quickly agreed to meet up with him that night. I knew it. He's the reason I lost my Claire. Eventually, Aiden began to stir, making me uneasy. With the help of a phone charger, I made sure he never moved again. Claire looked shocked when she saw me get out of Aiden's truck, wearing his clothes. "What the hell?" she asked. "Isn't this who you wanted tonight?" "I'm just being who you wanted all along," I responded. "Where's Aiden?" "You crazy," she shouted. I don't remember what happened next, or maybe I just blocked it out. All I remember is walking back from the pond, clothes wet, and my face and arms scratched and bloody. The officer snapped me back into reality, asking why I returned on Saturday. The thing is, I couldn't tell him. It was like I was in a trance, living a life that wasn't mine. The officer placed me under arrest. I still couldn't figure out why I went back. In an empty corner of the room, I saw her. Claire. She was dripping wet, her hair and clothes dirty, and a creepy smile on her face. I stepped back, pointing, and the officer appeared confused. After I started screaming, I heard him call for backup. I was injected with something. My eyes became heavy and I closed them. I could still see Claire with my eyes closed. I'm never going on another dating app ever again. About 2 months ago, I 23 a.m., was scrolling through Tinder at night on a Wednesday. I remember distinctly that it was a Wednesday because of all the crazy shit that's happened so far. Besides the point, I'm scrolling through Tinder and swipe right on some girls and get a couple of matches. I don't ever reach out first, so after I'm done with swiping I take a shower and watch a show. While I was watching the show, one of the girls, we'll call her Stacy, texted me hey, and she was pretty cute, so I texted back relatively quickly, hey, I like your cat. She had a cat in her pictures, but I think I like its owner even more, and so we get to talking and I give her my number, whatever. After I send Stacy my last text, she doesn't reply until 2 weeks later. By then I had already started talking to another girl, we'll call her, who is my current girlfriend Brittany, who I really liked, and we had met up for coffee already and gone on a lunch date as well. So I just think whatever, I really like Brittany and would rather not jeopardize my current relationship with her. Another week goes by, and by this point Brittany and I are officially a couple. The Monday of the 4th week, I get another text from Stacy saying, hello, are you gonna respond to me? And I think, well, it's not fair to keep her waiting and not say anything about my current predicament, so I respond with, hello, yeah, I actually met someone. Sorry for not being upfront, but we're together now. And she started responding before I even had time to exit the messages. She said, WTF, you can't do that. Michael, not my real name. And then a stream of other texts like, I thought we were together, you're a liar, this is cheating, and a couple more across those lines. And I was thinking, what the hell, because we had only talked for one night and that's all. So I said back to her, listen, I don't know what the big deal is, we only talked for one night. Besides, I thought you just moved on to someone else. And she, to say the least, did not respond well to that. She goes on to say, what the fuck, Michael, so just because we only talked one night you think it's okay to just talk to other girls? I'm getting mad at this point, so I just say, are you fucking stupid? Yes, that's exactly what I think, that's what I just said. I'm pretty sure anyone with a brain would agree with me too, so up to this point it's just been petty arguing, so I'm not very nervous at all. But the next thing she said took it all from 0 to 100 very fast. She says, I know where you fucking live, Michael, and I will get you and your stupid fucking girlfriend with a machete if you don't fucking break up with her. And I just looked at it, shocked, because I didn't think that would be the response after such a short argument, especially after I barely knew this girl. On top of all that, I'm confused because I never gave my address out to her. Then I started thinking, and I remember I did tell her while I was drunk that night. Because she had said she wanted to send me a stuffed animal that she showed me and I said I liked. So at this point, I freaked the fuck out and blocked her on everything possible. I showed Brittany the texts and she just seemed to think it was funny and not threatening at all. And that makes me think I'm just overreacting to her petty threats, so I don't worry about it. 4 days later, I'm sleeping in my bed comfortably with Brittany at 3 a.m. when I hear glass from the dining room shatter. What the hell? I get up and take my .45 from the drawer on the bedside table. I'm trying not to wake Brittany up, but as I turn to head towards the bedroom door, I can see her from my peripheral vision already up. Before she can say anything, I put my finger up to my mouth in a gesture for her to stay quiet. She starts shaking and I can tell she's about to cry. I have to go back and reassure her and ask if she can call 911 while I'm checking things out. She eventually does, and just as I'm about to begin heading back to the bedroom door, someone begins banging and screaming at the door very loudly, to the point where it sounds like something just broke the sound barrier. I load my pistol, take it off safety, and point it towards the door. The banging and screaming stop after a minute or so. Then I see a large serrated hunting knife go through the door. Whoever is on the other side then proceeds to jam the blade through the door over and over and over again while screaming at the top of their lungs. At this point, I'm scared because I've never killed anyone, and I don't want to. I began thinking if I would be punished for killing this person. I didn't want to go to prison. And I thought about Brittany for a good minute too. I thought I might have a future together with her. Just as all this comes up in my mind, and I know I'm gonna have to take whoever it is out, I hear police sirens down the street, and the intruder on the other side of the door drops their knife, and I can hear them trying to make a run for it. I then hear "Hey, hey, don't move, stay where you are. Put your hands behind your back and lay down on the ground." Promptly after that, a police officer comes inside and asks if we're okay and if anyone is harmed. We're both fine, so they then ask us to give our statements down at the station. We oblige. As we're walking with the police officer outside to their cruiser, I see who's in the back of the police car, and guess who I see? Stacy was in the back looking like she had been on meth for the past few days, and she looked at me like she wanted to skin me alive. I see her start screaming at me, but I can't hear her because the car she was in was too far away to hear much of anything. Anyways, Brittany and I give our statements and get out of the station at around 8 a.m. We both are exhausted and just fall asleep. Now, about a month later, we're still together and I love her very much. I hope nothing like this ever has to happen to her or us again. And remember, everyone, keep a weapon on yourself. My experience with a girl who practiced brujeria. Brujeria is the Spanish language word for witchcraft. I'll be changing the name of the girl in question, but everything else is true. I was in 10th grade when I first met Melissa, and I didn't see her in any romantic light whatsoever. I was dating another girl named Lauren at the time. I'm sorry, Lauren. I didn't even know how to properly date someone. I had only known Melissa for a few days, and seemingly out of nowhere Melissa brought me FB posts convincing me to leave Lauren, and for whatever stupid reason I did. We started talking, and eventually Melissa and I began dating. It was a regular relationship, or so I thought, until all the nightmares and weird things began. I started having horrific and very vivid nightmares, and more often than not, sleep paralysis. Nightmares are so horrific that anyone I've told just looks at me like I'm crazy. For the sake of keeping the story going, I'll post one of them at the end. I would start seeing things out of the corner of my eyes that wouldn't be there when I looked directly at them. I didn't give it too much thought though. My siblings and I didn't have a good childhood and chalked it up to that. Fast forward through our strange relationship and we had broken up. I'm not sure why I was infatuated with her. Could it have been because it was my first real relationship? Or the fact it had lasted 1.5 to 2 years? In any case, I never understood why. Another relationship with a lying, cheating bitch, and 2 years later I began to see my fiancée. Her mother is very religious, and when she heard about my nightmares she blessed me and gave me some holy water. I'm not religious at all, but the nightmares stopped for a bit. I had just come back from basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia for the Army, and I began living with friends when my sister decided to move back to Cali, and she moved in with my ex. My sister at this time didn't believe in the paranormal and hadn't even given it much thought, but living with Melissa quickly changed that. My sister told me that Melissa's whole family knew she was practicing black magic or brujeria, and they would have things thrown at them when no one else was home, hear noises and breathing behind them. My sister, who worked a graveyard shift at the time, would come home when it was still dark. The bottom floor had no windows, so it would be pitch black, and they had no pets, but she would feel something run by her legs each time she came home. Meanwhile, on my side, my nightmares came back in full force. A side effect of her coming back into my life indirectly? Weird things began to happen again. My now brother-in-law was in Maryland and was the biggest person in the house at 6 feet 4 inches, but one night as I was turning off the light in my kitchen, I saw a huge black mass sitting on my couch in the living room. It scared the living hell out of me, and I ran upstairs as quickly as possible. My sister moved out of that place shortly after when she claimed she heard breathing right by her face and a man's voice say hello next to her ear, and it was just her and Melissa in the room. She got out of there and came to live with us. She told me then, more in detail, that Melissa kept a candle with my name carved in it and a knife in the wall above it. She saw Melissa's Brujeria books, and Melissa claimed that she had cast some kind of spell on me to get me to like her when we first started dating. Sometimes I wonder if that is the reason I dated her out of nowhere and why I began to have horrific nightmares. Anyway, I learned from this experience to be careful who you meet and talk to, because you never know what they do behind closed doors. You guys stay safe. For those curious, here is one of my nightmares. One night my fiancé and I were sleeping, and our apartment had a sliding door by our heads which led to a small patio. I thought I was awake because everything was exactly as it was in reality. I could feel something watching me, and I began to hear noises in the patio, so I stood up to check it out. I pulled back the shades and opened the sliding door, and there in the darkness was my mom. She was saying something I couldn't understand and started coming towards me, hands outstretched. For whatever reason, I knew I couldn't let her in, so I had one hand on her forehead and one on her shoulder, trying to push her away. She kept pushing forward, and her neck began ripping until eventually it hung loosely behind her. I could feel and see every fiber of her neck as it was being torn off. She stopped briefly, but it was all I needed to close the door, lock it, and pull the shade shut. I jumped into bed and had the covers over me. But as I stated earlier, the sliding door and patio were right by our heads, so I could hear her calling my name as she continued to try to get in. I woke up sweating and immediately told my fiancé about my nightmare. My siblings and I are adopted. The last time I saw my biological mom, I was 13 to 14. That day we told her we never wanted to see her again. She was a terrible mother, and I had moved on with my life. To this day I haven't, and now that I'm older I wonder where she is. You see, my mother went by many names, and no one ever met her family either, so even if I wanted to look for her, I couldn't. Anyway, thank you if you've made it this far. Stay safe. The dating contestants. In the dimly lit corner of a forgotten warehouse, Buck Michael, dressed in his most presentable attire, a worn-out blue check shirt paired with a newly bought navy tie, carefully applied a knockoff Hugo Boss aftershave. Its scent permeating the air with an oddly familiar yet off-putting odor. With a practiced smile, he settled into the seat across from his date, a redhead named Evelyn Pierce, her chest adorned with a sticker bearing her name and her nervousness palpable. "Evelyn," he exclaimed, leaning forward with clasped hands on the table, his elbows resting on its surface. "What a pleasure to see you again. I'm thrilled you wanted to meet once more. Our connection was undeniable, even in those fleeting 5 minutes. How have you been? How are the kids at school? Evelyn's eyes darted around, her unease unmistakable. Michael's presence seemed to overwhelm her, and her voice trembled as she responded. Her hands shook, causing the candle flame to flicker as if echoing her anxiety. Unfazed by her discomfort, Michael's eyes locked on hers. A malicious grin tugged at the corners of his lips, contrasting with his charming demeanor. He continued to probe her, delving into her past and her experiences, pushing her boundaries with unsettling questions. Have you ever cheated on someone, Evelyn? Intentionally or accidentally? Have you ever lied to spare feelings or sought attention, even if it meant deceiving someone? His words were delivered with a calculated rhythm, designed to chip away at her composure. Evelyn's voice wavered, tears glistening in her eyes as she stammered in response. The weight of his questions hung heavy in the air, like a fog of dread that refused to dissipate. Michael's words grew increasingly ominous, painting a twisted portrait of moral ambiguity. He explored the depths of her psyche, forcing her to confront her own dark thoughts. As Evelyn's desperation escalated, Michael reveled in her distress, a disturbing satisfaction flickering behind his eyes. Have you ever thought about killing someone, Evelyn? Imagine their pain and suffering. Embrace the darkness that dwells within? Evelyn's pleas for mercy grew frantic, her terror building like a crescendo. The warehouse walls seemed to close in on her as Michael's psychological torment intensified. Her screams pierced the air, a raw symphony of horror that echoed through the abandoned space. Michael watched, impassive, as her struggle reached its peak and that danced across her anguished face. Michael's nonchalant demeanor remained unchanged, a stark contrast to the turmoil he had ignited within Evelyn. His focus shifted to the flickering candle, its light casting his face in a ghastly pallor as he mused about exposing darkness and embracing chaos. As Evelyn's struggles subsided, Michael rose from his seat, the weight of disappointment tainting his features. He stopped her repeatedly and wiped a speck of blood from his chin with a napkin, casting a detached glance toward Katerina Cruz, bound and gagged nearby. Her eyes glinted with defiance, a stark reminder of his impending plan. Michael's attention turned to his captive blonde date, Mandy Rogers, who sat in her chair, bound and trembling. The air was charged with a mixture of fear and anticipation. He approached her with calculated steps, his unsettling grin intact. "Mandy," he exclaimed, feigning enthusiasm. "What a pleasure to meet you again. You had some interesting thoughts on escapable fate, didn't you?" Mandy's wide eyes locked onto his, her apprehension mirrored in her quivering voice. She had witnessed the horrors inflicted on Evelyn and Katerina, and her desperation to escape their fate was palpable. Michael's words flowed like venom, a sinister dance that weaved through Mandy's defenses. He played with her emotions, eliciting responses that showcased her vulnerability. Each question, each comment, dug deeper into her psyche, unearthing her most profound fears and hidden desires. "Do you believe in destiny, Mandy? Do you think you can escape the inevitable?" The tension in the room grew thicker, suffocating, as Michael's psychological gains intensified. Mandy's pleas and promises echoed off the walls, a desperate plea for mercy that fell on deaf ears. Michael's face remained a mask of calculated indifference as he toyed with Mandy's emotions, pushing her to confront the darkest corners of her mind. The candlelight flickered ominously, casting elongated shadows that seemed to dance in rhythm with Mandy's distress. In a climactic moment, Mandy's will seemed to shatter. Her voice trembled as she responded to Michael's relentless questioning, revealing her innermost fears and vulnerabilities. Michael leaned back in his chair, his unsettling grin widening. "You know, Mandy, there's something fascinating about the bitch in you. It's like a fucking fake. The way it can be manipulated, twisted, and ultimately shattered. Escapable fate, as you so say. Be careful on social dating apps. Okay, well, this just happened earlier today and it disturbed me. I'm also writing this on my phone, so it won't be perfect with spelling and grammar. So to begin the story, I am a 17-year-old male who lives in California. With the whole COVID-19, most people my age have been feeling bored, and a lot of us have gone on dating apps to flirt with each other or whatever. That includes me. I started using multiple apps during this quarantine to get nudes, which was a very big mistake, and ended up downloading many hookup apps to try to accomplish my goal. I met many people, and then I met this person who called themselves Shannon. This person described themselves as a 22-year-old woman, and to my eyes very pretty. So I messaged them to engage in conversation to try to get nudes, and we ended up talking on Tinder. Me being aware of what I was doing, lied about my age and said that I was 18 and already graduated high school, which I have not. So things started smoothly, and we navigated to kick to sext each other. We sent face pics to each other and sent explicit photos to each other, which was a very big mistake. Mid-conversation with Shannon, I noticed that in the photos that they had sent me, the clothes she was wearing changed between the pictures that were supposed to be taken within about 5 minutes of each other. This I had brought up, to which they replied, "I just changed, LOL." Which I thought was kinda fishy but didn't care about later. Then this person asked for my phone number and social media. I thought that this was fine and sent them my phone number and social media. They wanted to call me, but I was busy, so I said later, and they said fine. Then more dirty talk occurred, and they asked for my address to come say hi and to send postcards, which I realized was supposed to be my nude photo, as I made them aware I still lived with my parents. I rejected this and said that was unnecessary, and that if they wanted to hook up we could meet somewhere else. This comment was replied to with hostility. They said, "Oh, you wanna ghost me, huh?" To which I said that my folks would be suspicious if a woman was sending me postcards and coming to say hi to me that they had never met or seen. This response made my skin crawl, as they said, "Oh, well, I already have your address thanks to your phone number," to which they called me a liar about things and had answered previously, such as if I had Facebook and such. I responded that I don't even remember making a Facebook, and becoming much quieter to the comment made about the knowledge of my personal information. Then they messaged me asking, "What are you scared of?" To which I replied I was concerned that they knew my address. Then they sent a collage that had a picture of me and all the social media that they were aware of, and an explicit photo that I had sent. They proceeded to write a very long paragraph about how they planned to ruin my life and spread the photo to all of my friends and family, while saying, "Let's see how your parents think about seeing your pretty dick." I was in shock at this point and was in a deep panic. I remember my heart sinking and being out of breath. I felt like my life was over. Then I heard a phone notification that said that they would not send the photo to my school, my friends, and my family if I complied with their demands. I never found out what they were. I asked what I did to deserve this, and why were they doing this? They just replied, "Stop fucking asking me questions, it's pissing me off." I didn't even know what to say, so I left the message unopened. They began texting me through iMessage and saying, "I'll give you a few minutes to choose." I was very scared for my future and the safety of all of my family. During this whole time I was messaging my friends, and they were trying to calm me down. I was so close to just trying to end my life right there, they calmed me down. They suggested I tell this person that I was underage so they would realize that they would be fucked if they fulfilled their threats. While we were talking, they sent me a collaged photo of me and said, "After you, somebody is next," which chilled me to the bone. I told them that I was underage and that they would be fucked if they tried anything. They replied to me saying, "Oh, I love that fighting spirit." I asked why they were doing this again, and they demanded me to stop asking questions and to comply with their demands. I since blocked the number and deleted all social media, and I have no idea what to do. I'm scared, honestly. I heard many stories of similar situations on YouTube and didn't imagine it could happen to me, and it did. I'm hoping someone could learn from this and not make the same mistakes I did earlier today. I sincerely regret ever messaging this person, and I'm very scared. I'm writing this currently at 3 a.m. Pacific Standard Time because I'm very nervous about what will happen. If anyone has any advice, it would be very appreciated and could help in any way, that would be much appreciated. My boyfriend's favorite meal is meatloaf. I'm not sure where to put this, so it's on a throwaway account. I need help like right now. Long story short, my 23 boyfriend Liam, 26, of 5 years, has this ex-girlfriend. Me and this girl, and fake name, used to be friends. We grew up in high school together. We did everything together. Then she started dating a boy named Liam. I was super happy for her, and she seemed to be in a great relationship. But things took a turn for the worse when she ended up cheating on him. I didn't know until she called me crying, telling me that he had broken up with her. I had a conversation with him, and apparently she thought he was on a date with some girl, which was just his boss. So she went out and slept with his best friend. I get where she was coming from, but then again, I don't. She should have talked to him. But anyway, around 4 days after, Anna and Liam broke up and ended up going missing. No letters, no text, she was just gone. Liam was devastated, like full on, crying in my arms. He thought it was his fault. Cops and detectives never found her, and everyone figured she just ran away. But for some reason, her parents thought someone had taken her. Now the and I know is strong and smart. No one would be able to take her. We live in a small town, and even cops knew that. But moving on, fast forward a few years of me and Liam dating. I was there for him through the missing of and his unemployment and all the hard things in life, as he was there for mine. We had a happy 5 years of dating when I saw him looking through my phone. Now I'm no cheater, but I had information that no one could see. But when his eyes met mine, I knew he already saw what I was hiding. I tried to explain. I did, but he wouldn't let me talk. He told me to get out of his house. He became crazy and was yelling that he didn't want to see me. He told me that he wanted me to stop following him everywhere. I didn't understand what he meant by that. Had the last 5 years meant nothing to him? I spent the last 5 years of my life catering to him. I left. I had things to do anyway. As I was leaving, I realized I was starving. It's been a while since I had a home-cooked meal, so I went to the store, bought some ingredients, and headed home. I was debating if I wanted to invite Liam over or not because I was cooking his favorite meal, meatloaf. I also had a pet, Mila, and she loves meatloaf too. But she eats anything I give her. I picked up some bandages while at the store too because I ran out at home. When I got there, I grabbed the meat from the freezer and used the ingredients to start cooking dinner. I decided to call Liam to invite him over, but realized I left my phone at his house. So I just made enough for me. After I ate, I heard thumping in my basement. I forgot to feed Mila. So I cut my meatloaf in half and brought it down for her. As I was walking down the steps, I heard a knock on my front door. So I turned around and went to see who was at my door. It was Liam. He hands me my phone and tells me we need to talk. Mila was still thumping around downstairs, so I was kinda in a hurry to feed her. It has been 2 days, I think. I'm a busy person, grinning face with sweat. I tell Liam to sit down as I cut him some meatloaf as he starts to dig, and he tells me how much he loves my meatloaf. I don't know what you do to this to make it so good, but it surprises me every time I smile and tell him I have to go feed Mila. He said all right, and he kept eating. I go downstairs and close the door to see Mila sitting on the floor with her bandages all messed up. I sign and pull the bandages from my pocket and start taking the dirty ones off of her limbs. I put clean ones on all but her right arm. And I mean, Mila sees a saw in my hand and tries to let out a scream, but nothing comes out. I told her I was sorry, but I had to replace the special meat from the meatloaf. I promised that it would be put to good use just like her meat for the meatloaf was. I couldn't have just let her get away after hurting the person I love, could I? Dating app danger. During quarantine, I have been on Tinder trying to get to know new girls. I got a few matches here and there, but none of them ever really materialized. A few days ago, I matched with a girl. We will call her Bree. We messaged on the app for a while and she asked for my Snapchat. I decided that would probably be more fun to talk on, so I gave it to her. We add each other and she asks if she can come over so we can do things. I politely decline because I just met her and I'm not fully set on looking for that. She seems upset about it and keeps asking to come over. I keep telling her that's not what I'm looking for. She stops sending messages for a while. Eventually, after about 10 minutes, I got a message saying I'll be seeing you. I message back saying I don't know what she means. 30 minutes go by and I get a picture from her. It's a street light on a dark road. At this point in time, it's between 12:30 to 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm wondering what she is doing out. I ask her what she's doing and I get another picture. This time it's a picture of a baseball diamond in the dark. I look at it for a second wondering why it looks familiar. Then I realize it's familiar because it's the diamond that is across the street from my house. I message her back and tell her to stop. She opens it, starts to type, and then stops. A few minutes pass and I start to think she is gone. I look out my window to see if she is still across the street. I see the dark outline of what appears to be 3 people standing around a car. While looking through my blinds, a light flashes on me, and I hear someone in the group yell, "There he is!" I close my blinds and curtains and check the lock on my doors. I start to hear knocking on my front door. This is followed by a woman's voice yelling, "Let me in!" I call the police and ask for them to send a car my way. I live in a small town, so we do not have many police officers. The station tells me that the police just dealt with a previous call and should do a drive-by in a few minutes. I yelled at the door that I called the police. About a minute later, I hear the squeal of tires. I look out my window and the car is gone. The police pull into my driveway and come to the door and talk to me saying they don't see anything. I tell them what happened, but I don't have any proof that they were there. I thank the police for coming and they take off. I check all the doors and windows in my house and I go to my room. I look at my Snapchat and try to figure out how she found me. I look at the map and realize that it somehow turned back on after I turned my location off. I deactivate it again and go back to sleep. She messaged me the next day that she hoped she could see me again and she hoped that the next meeting would go better. Following that message, I blocked her and reported her on Tinder. This was 3 days ago now. If anything else happens, I will post an update. I hope this is a lesson for anyone who uses location on Snapchat. It's very dangerous. I love a little naughty with my man. It's so hard to meet the right guys nowadays. I've joined all the dating apps and every once in a while I'll meet a guy who I click with. It's not hard to get a booty call guy, but it's the really deep guy I search out. The guys who want more than just a one-night stand, who know how to really treat a woman with disrespect and misogyny. I've always had a thing for the bad guys. I'm a relatively powerful woman, and because as a woman surgeon, everyone basically walks on eggshells around me, that makes it hard to find guys who don't act like I'm the queen bee. I'm a damn good surgeon, and they all want me on their side when their patients need care. Dating a guy who will give me a little disrespect and a lewd smack on the ass gives me a thrill I just can't pass up. Finding the guy with just the right amount of jerk under his belt is such a turn on. I can't get enough of them. Often with large trucks, larger muscles, and brains the size of a misshaped walnut is the type that drives me wild. Giovanni rolled up to pick me up all swagger and bravado, and when I saw him on the first date it made me hopeful I had finally found the one. He thinks he's such a badass boy, but I really give him a run for his money. He's excited that I'm an excellent cook as well as looking damn good if a little on the heavier side, which he's pointed out to me a few times in a crass way that really gets my motor going. I've prepared a really nice meal for our third date tonight. After the third date is always the special one if you know what I mean, wink. He eats like the barbarian he thinks he is, belching without excuse and assuring me that he'll help me work off the gourmet meal I've cooked for us afterward. When he ate the creme brulee before I could even properly torch the top of his because the only thing I should light on fire is his junk, I rolled my eyes politely while thinking to myself he had no idea how very right he was. You see, I know for a fact Giovanni is a womanizer and a horrible man. I helped put back together the little girl his ex left him with after he beat her nearly to death. I'm a damn good surgeon and a more than passable chef, and now that I've properly drugged him, he's going to be the main entree in my next exquisite meal for the next D-bag that thinks brutalizing women and children is a fun sport. Bon appetit, motherfucker.